Hello everybody, welcome back to Steven's Fight Show, and in this video we're going to be talking about Amanda Nunes and her dominant win against Julianna Pena at UFC 277. Now the main event for UFC 277 was the rematch between Amanda Nunes and Julianna Pena. Julianna Pena got pretty much the biggest upset in women's MMA history, or probably even MMA history as a whole, where she got a submission win against Amanda Nunes and was a big underdog in that fight as well. And this fight was extremely exciting because not only was it a rematch between two great fighters, but if we put skill and their ability to fight to the side, and we look at this fight from a storyline perspective, we have Amanda Nunes, who's this dominant, great woman fighter who's beaten so many great fighters, steamrolled so many opponents, and she's called the Lioness for a reason. She's the one that people fear in the women's bantamweight or featherweight division, whatever division she fights. She's the fighter that a lot of female fighters fear. And you have Julianna Pena, who's this underdog, who's this hard worker, this tough fighter who's willing to do whatever it takes to get her hand raised and become a champion. And she did it once in front of everybody's eyes. So now this rematch has sparked a lot of questions on whether or not she could pull it off again. And although Julianna Pena came up short, it was an amazing fight between two great fighters that gave the fans a great show. So before the fight, I had a prediction that Amanda Nunes would win this fight by decision for many reasons. The first reason being that Amanda Nunes wasn't 100% ready in the first fight. Now, people might say it's excuses for her losing the fight, but she did have a lot of major problems before the fight. She caught COVID, and because of that, she wasn't able to run, she wasn't able to spar, and she was also injured as well. And in the fight, we saw Amanda Nunes so unlike herself that some of those factors of her not being able to train properly could have affected the way she felt during the fight. And another thing is that Pena also beat Nunes in a way where I wasn't just convinced that she was able to do it again, because she was fighting with a lot of fire. They both went toe to toe in that second round of the first fight, and Pena got the better of the exchanges, but it's way too risky for her to pull it off again. Amanda Nunes was tired and she was rushing in that second round. She didn't look like herself. Everything she was doing looked a bit forced. And as great of a fighter that she is, it was hard for me to believe that she was going to come into the rematch with the same mistakes again. So let's get into the fight. Amanda Nunes had great adjustments coming into this fight with her stance, her grappling, and her timing. Everything in her game plan was just good. And in my opinion, Nunes switching stances really threw Pena off. As the fight started, Amanda Nunes was taking her time a lot more in this fight, and she was dropping Pena so many times in the first two rounds. I think it was a total of 5 knockdowns, and most of them came from her check right hook from the southpaw stance. And Julianna, she has this style where she loves to blitz in and throw punches running forward, and typically she leads with the jab. Julianna has a good jab and she has great timing with it, but because she leads with the jab, she can't see the right hook coming over the top because she's blinded by her lead hand. When she throws the jab, and typically Julianna loves to take her head off the center line, she can't see the check hook coming right over her head. And the thing about the check right hook, it wasn't even like a normal hook at all. It was almost like a lead overhand by Amanda, and she kept hitting her in the right spots as well. And Amanda also had a different level of patience in this fight, knowing that if she rushes and she makes too many mistakes, it will give Pena opportunities to capitalize. In the first fight, Nunes was exhausted and she was too comfortable walking forward and rushing combos and exchanging in the pocket with Pena. This time, when Pena would press the action forward, instead of trying to exchange, Amanda either counters first or she takes a couple steps back to sit down on a hard counter shot. Amanda was also a lot more on her toes this fight, something that she's been good at throughout her entire career, and it was something that was missing in the first fight as well, her ability to move in and out and stay on her toes and not allow herself to get into some exchanges where it could get ugly. People were also wondering why Amanda Nunes started to grapple later on in the fight when she had success on the feet. And in my opinion, I think it's because of what Julianna Pena presents on the feet. Yeah, she might not be an elite striker, but Julianna Pena is tough as nails. She took so many big shots and never hesitated to keep moving forward. And dealing with somebody like that who brings that kind of pressure, brings that kind of volume, it can be really fatiguing. Amanda also had a lot of success with elbows on the ground when she first took her down, and I think she believed she would have had an easier path to victory if she continued to grapple. Overall, it was a great fight, a great performance by Amanda, and she reclaims the double champ status and continues to push her narrative of becoming the greatest woman fighter in MMA. So now that Amanda Nunes has beaten Julianna Pena in a rematch, fans are calling for a third fight between the two of them, and personally for me, I wouldn't mind at all seeing both Nunes and Pena run it back for a third time. And before people say, oh, it's not worth running it back, Nunes dominated Pena and it was a complete shutout by Amanda Nunes, so there's no reason to run it back. In my opinion, there is a reason to run it back because Julianna Pena, obviously we saw how tough she was. She made it a hard fight for Amanda Nunes, even though Amanda Nunes was winning pretty comfortably. When Julianna Pena was on her back, she almost had Amanda Nunes in a couple of submissions, and she showed a ton of heart where even though she was losing, she continued to try. And I agree that it was a dominant performance by Amanda, but it wasn't dominant where it was easy for Amanda. Along the way, there were still potential threats and dangers where Amanda could have lost the fight. Pena has that Nate Diaz approach where she doesn't care how many she needs to take to give some of her own. And we saw that after she got knocked down so many times. She almost had Amanda in the armbar, I believe. And it was close, bro. It was close for Julianna to finish that submission. The punishment Pena was taking on the ground was also brutal as well. But again, she continued to fight even with all that blood dripping over her face. Even though it was clear as day that Amanda was the more powerful fighter, Pena still managed to give Amanda problems with her volume. She took Amanda's best shot and continued to come forward while Amanda was getting caught with a couple of her shots. And people might say it makes more sense for Amanda and Valentina Shevchenko to run it for a third time. And I don't disagree with that, but the thing is, I believe Amanda versus Pena 3 would be a lot more exciting than Amanda versus Shevchenko 3. Pena has shown that she belongs at the top of this division, and she can not only hang with Amanda, but with any other bantamweight in the world as well. A third fight between these two would not only give the fans a great show, but it would seal the rivalry between the two of them because it's 1-1 right now. So now the question becomes, is Amanda Nunes the greatest woman fighter in history? And in my opinion, I think she is. Due to her reign as a champion, her resume, and her performances against high-level fighters, she certainly has fought a list of great opponents throughout her career, such as people like Valentina Shevchenko, Chris Cyborg, Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, Holly Holm, and so on. And it's not like she barely beat these fighters. She either finished or dominated all of these female fighters outside of like Valentina Shevchenko. And that is big because it shows the levels between Amanda and everybody else that she has faced. And she was so dominant for a while that there were discussions about whether or not anybody would even come close to beating Amanda because she was levels above everybody else. Everybody is obviously aware of her ability to put anybody out with one punch, but her skill speaks for itself and she's definitely well-rounded in her game. You can make a case for other female fighters to be the greatest, but they all haven't faced the competition that Amanda has, and they most likely probably didn't match the performances that she put up. And it's hard to say that she's not the greatest as well because, I mean, if you put other people that belong in the discussion for being the greatest women's fighter ever, a majority of them, or if not all of them, has fallen to Amanda Nunes. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say, and let me know, is Amanda Nunes the greatest women's fighter in history? Are you interested to see a trilogy match between Amanda Nunes and Julianna Pena? Or would you rather be interested in Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be greatly appreciated. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace.